Your name is Kari Sharp,
Correct.
and you are an RDN, which is a registered dietitian and nutritionist. How did you find this career path?
I started out actually in art and design and complete 180, right? I had a child. My older one had GI issues and ended up in the hospital. And the doctor put him on medication. And I just thought, there has to be another solution. My child can't be on medication his whole life. We started just changing his food. And in 3 months, we did not need medication.
They always say, let food be thy medicine.
Yes, it was a huge defining moment. In 1986, the best research that I found was in the New York school systems. Around 12% of the students were testing 2 grades below their level. A dietitian was hired, brought into the schools. She changed the food, reduced sugar, took out a lot of the food dyes over the course of 4 years, and every year the scores went up. And it was 15% higher than when it started by the end of 4 years of their national average.
Wow.
Yeah.
Let's dive into some strategies. Like you mentioned, food chaining. Tell me about that.
Yes.
Thank you so much for being here. I know that when we initially spoke, I learned so much from talking with you. So I'm excited to share this information. So your name is Kari Sharp.
Correct.
And you are an RDN, which is a registered dietitian and nutritionist. Is that correct?
Correct. Registered dietitian nutritionist. Yes.
Amazing. And how did you find this career path?
There's a long story behind that one. I started out actually in art and design and complete 180, right? So I started out in art and design and I had kids and I took a step back and raised my kids. And early on, I had a child. My older one had GI issues and ended up in the hospital. And so we went to the doctor and the doctor put him on medication. And I just thought, there has to be another solution. My child can't be on medication his whole life. Well, some conditions do require medication their whole life. I will say that. But in this case, I thought maybe it's the food. And I asked the gastroenterologist and she said, well, give it a try, whatever you want to do. So I took it upon myself to educate myself, but I also involved my child every step of the way. We were listening to podcasts, all sorts of stuff. And we started finding recipes online. We started just changing his food. And in 3 months, we did not need medication. And he was literally, in a sense, cured. But we also were aware of the medication, of the foods that he had to avoid for a long time. Yeah.
And they always say, let food be thy medicine. But really, was that kind of like, wow, I just changed not only my child's life, but your life as the mother and the family dynamic. And you're like, I could do this for other people.
Yes, it was a huge defining moment. And then because of that, one of my friends said, well, why don't you become a dietitian? And I was like, oh, I didn't even know that was a thing. I had never heard of it. So I just hopped back into school. And while I was in school and raising my kids, I became a docent and I was teaching nutrition education in the elementary schools. And then I got a little crazy. I started becoming an advocate. And so I started changing systems in the food system in the schools through Alliance for a Healthier Generation. I was a liaison for the school system. And the changes, our school actually won an award because, and then I just kept going from there. I became a diet tech. I ran a kitchen cooking school for kids. So I was teaching kids cooking all while I was in school to become a dietitian.
That is amazing.
Thank you.
I can imagine the school is such a huge impact because it's not just your kid, it's every kid in that school is getting affected. Were there some major things or changes or foods or dyes that you had to take out, or how did that kind of correlate to the change? Did it correlate to changes in behavior for the children?
Absolutely. Well, they had a list of things you had to change. So we added movement to their day. I know it was big. So we every day started with like 15 minutes of movement. The whole school was on the playground field. And the food itself, we paid attention to, I mean, the school has set lunches, so we contacted the school system and made sure there was a fruit or vegetable. We made sure there was a basket of fruit at checkout where they can grab it. Like, there were a lot of little changes that came into play. So as far as like food dyes, preservatives, we couldn't go that far, which I wish we could have, but it was a lot of just access to fruits and vegetables that kids were just not even exposed to. And it went along with the nutrition lessons in the classroom. So we would bring in a fruit or a vegetable for them to even taste. And then the lessons, and the kids would go back and tell their parents about what they tried and ask them to buy these foods.
That's amazing. So exposure, access, all of these things together.
Absolutely.
Has there ever been any research on the power of changing food in the cafeteria for like outcomes for children?
That is a great question. And yes, we have done so much research, but in 1986, the best research that I found was in the New York school systems. A dietitian was hired, brought into the schools. The school had very low test scores. They were very low for national average. They also had around 12% of the students were testing 2 grades below their level. Yeah, so this is where we started. Really low test scores, 12% about 2 grades below. Then the dietitian said, hey, can I make some changes to the food? They didn't make any changes to like the education, adding in programs. This was over 4 years. She changed the food, reduced sugar, took out a lot of the food dyes and a lot of very specific preservatives. Over the course of 4 years, and every year, the scores went up. And it was 15% higher than when it started by the end of 4 years of their national average. And the children that tested the 2 grades below, there was only about 4% of them at that point.
Wow.
Yeah. So we think, okay, this is all about testing, or these studies are how do neurodivergent kids react, but in reality, it's all kids. So it was really one of my favorite studies, and we've had really great studies over the course of as technology changes and grows, but I would say that was the most impactful one that I have read. And
that's amazing. And also, it's funny to me that it's 86. Like, it was yesterday. We have known the impact of food on our, I'm sure, on their focus, concentration, confidence, all these different things. That's an amazing study. So you went to school, you became an RDN.
Yeah.
And how did you get, so you work with children, but do you specialize with neurodivergent children? Is that correct?
Correct. When I first started my practice, so I have a private practice, and when I first started my practice, I was very close with a pediatric neurologist and a pediatrician because my other child was neurodivergent. So I saw them on a regular basis, and they kept saying, when are you going to open your practice? When are you going to open your practice so that we could send our patients your way? And I was like, open a practice? Okay, sure. Why not? So I ended up, and it always is close to my heart. And why I got started with GI issues with my son, but neurodiversity has always captured my attention. So I specialized from day one in kids who are more neurodivergent.
And that's an umbrella term, right? That has some subgroups.
Absolutely.
So could walk me through what some of the major groups are that you work with.
I would say the top 3 that come into my office, while there are many other rare conditions and all sorts of conditions and conditions that overlap, the top 3 are ADHD, and that's any type, autism, and epilepsy, because they all require more specific diets or changes to their diet, or they have more taste, textures, food aversions. So it's a more needed.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. Because kids are picky in general.
Yes.
But if they are neurodivergent or, overcoming something else in their brain, whether it's inflamed or whatever, they're probably going to be even pickier or have even, different things that they're focused on. So let's start with maybe epilepsy. I thought that was really interesting. Are there some major do's and don'ts for nutrition, or how do you work with a child and their family who has epilepsy?
So with epilepsy, the ketogenic diet is the big one. It doesn't always work. Medication, this is one of the conditions that I said, you know what, sometimes medication is the best course of action. But some families want to try the ketogenic diet. To begin the diet, depending on the age of the kids, sometimes they have to be hospitalized for 2 weeks. That's how serious this diet is. Yeah. But we have also developed, and I work with neurologists very closely when we start a more modified version. So we might start small and work our way to the full diet, and then that will, and we'll see if it kicks in.
How does the ketogenic diet interact or help improve quality of life? Like, how does that work?
It's interesting. Yeah. So our bodies use carbohydrates for energy, especially our brain, and the stuff that goes through to our brain to fuel our brain is carbohydrates. But in the ketogenic diet, we take out the carbohydrates and we switch to fat. And using fat as energy, it converts to ketone bodies. And those can cross the barrier too and fuel the brain. And we don't really know the mechanism behind it, like the science behind it, but it does work. And back in old time history, starvation is what they used, what they thought was what the cure of these seizures. And this was like, I would say, ancient times. And they didn't really know what seizures were, but starving a person cured them in a sense. So what this ketogenic diet does technically starves a person.
Of the glucose
that goes to the brain, right. It's a very restrictive diet. It requires a bunch of vitamins, minerals, supplementations, and it's really hard on the child. So if you do it, it's usually more if a lot of medications don't work, or a younger child where you can use formula, or a child where we're hoping they'll grow out of it. Yeah.
But if you have no other options and your kid is having seizures, it's a good tool.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What about ADHD?
ADHD is the brain. The ADHD brain moves fast. It flips from side to side faster than the average brain. Uses more energy. It uses more protein. So there's higher needs. Now, a child who has this brain that's on hyperdrive, and it also works with the inattentive type because the brain is still going back and forth, even if their physical body isn't moving. Yeah. So there's more extreme cravings for energy, so carbohydrates. And our brain says we need more carbohydrates for energy, but our mind thinks otherwise. Our mind, especially a kid's mind, it's candy, it's cakes, it's cookies. So in reality, the brain is asking for more energy. We just have to transfer what the mind wants. That's a big difference. There's also medications that they're on that tamper the appetite and smell, taste, texture issues that kids can have.
So that affects the foods they want to eat, right?
Yes, correct.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I'm sure also all the snacking kind of stimulates their brain too, and they get these little dopamine hits and their brain is it's kind of a machine on overdrive. So that's really interesting. So do you recommend like having healthy snacks around, or what do you, I'm sure every child is different, but how do you work with someone like that?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, first, every child that walks into my door, I take an individualized approach. Everybody is different. Every child is unique. And they have their own likes and dislikes. That's different sometimes than their parents. So I always include, unless they're really, really young and can't, help, I always include the child. And I ask the child what's going on. And sometimes there's a disconnect between the parent and the child because the child can't communicate. So beginning working with them, I start with an intake. What do you eat? What do you like? What don't you like? So I can assess what foods they're avoiding. Maybe it is lack of hunger due to medication. There's so many approaches I could take.
And that's for any child who walks in your door.
Yeah. Adults too, believe it or not. But yes, for the child.
Amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And then talk to me a little bit more. So, about, I think let's cover autism a little bit, and then we'll do just your general approach with patients.
Yeah.
So, what are some things that are unique to a child with autism when you're working with them throughout their intake?
Yeah, sure. There is a lot of overlap with the taste, texture, smells. So that can happen in both conditions. Autism, sometimes there's undereating, sometimes there's overeating, sometimes there's so much movement that they can't keep up with calories. Sometimes it's avoiding a whole food group like vegetables. Sometimes it's a color thing, like I only eat brown foods. Yeah, there's a lot of things that goes on in the brain. And food is something that they can control in a very chaotic world. So I like to help them figure out how to control their own food, but also chain out, branch out, and a little food chaining going on so we can improve their palate, I guess, or make it less, I like to say limited food intake versus picky eating. So we increase their food intake.
I love that. And so let's dive into some strategies. Like you mentioned food chaining. Tell me about that. Are there any examples you can share of maybe like a family who's come in and how you've used food chaining?
Yes, there are many, many examples on that one. I'll start with one where I had a young girl and she, for lunch and for dinner, would only eat this little pizza that was made by grandma, not even by mom and dad. It was
not even from the store.
Not even it was grandma's pizza.
And those patient parents.
Yes.
Oh,
yeah.
Goodness.
So she would only eat that twice a day, like lunch and dinner. That was it. Breakfast, I don't remember what it was, but it was very limited, like waffles or something like that at home. And she was in school, so grandma would have to pack it and she would take it to school. When I talked to her about little by little food chaining, I talked to her about how she liked the bread, how she liked the sauce, how she liked the cheese. And I also said, what fruit or vegetable do you like? Because we wanted to include one other. So I like to put 2 things on a plate versus 1 for the children too. That's a big thing that I focus on. She said, I like carrots. That's the only thing I'll eat. I said, okay. So from now on, you're having pizza and carrots. Yeah. So little by little, chaining it out, the pizza became a cheese sandwich. Different forms of the same thing, bread, cheese, sauce. A little bit of pasta with red sauce because it's the same kind of the same thing. So we started chaining out a little bit of the same foods. And one day she came to me and she said, do I have to eat carrots anymore? And I said, no, is there another fruit or vegetable? She's like, I don't know. And I said, well, why don't you go to the store with your parents and find one? And so she picked cucumbers and she started slicing cucumbers, and little by little, the vegetable chained out because she would get tired of one, and then it became carrots and cucumbers, or it became, so the variety started increasing just because she got tired of the food. Yeah.
That's amazing. So what I love so much about what you said, but it seems like empowering them and making them a part of the process seems to be foundational. And to go from the pizza to a pasta. Let's say the pizza was red sauce, cheese, bread, and pasta is, carb, red sauce, and cheese.
Yes.
You don't just give her the pasta and say, no more pizza. You need to eat this.
No.
You're saying, hey, this is really similar. It's actually not as different as you think it is. And what do you want to try that? We think you're going to like it. So are you really connecting with them and what they know?
Yes. Same flavors, same textures, taste, but it still went with the pizza to school.
Oh, really?
Yes. You still transition them very slowly. It has to be on their terms. And sometimes it's just, we'll just put it in your lunchbox and you'll decide later. Let them do it when they're ready, because if you don't and you force or you say, no, you have to have this, then it becomes a big shutdown and their control is gone. And so they don't want to try it. But if they're the ones saying, so I actually showed her pictures. I said, look, here's your pizza, here's pasta, bread, just different shape, a little different flavor. And we tried very mild tasting things. So yes, I was like, what shape pasta do you want to try? So we went through like different shapes so that to really encourage her saying, and then she's like, oh, those bow tie. Okay. And that made her want to try it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was known as a kid to eat mac and cheese, cheese quesadilla, grilled cheese. Those were my staples, which is just bread and cheese in different forms.
Yeah.
But it is interesting. You think about the shapes of the pasta, and I love the SpongeBob mac and cheese and all those things. But that was actually me branching out in a way. And, I eat so differently now. My parents always joke about it. And there was even a phase when my brother, for a couple months as a kid, would only eat bean and cheese burritos from Taco Bell.
Yeah.
And my mom said he would go on a hunger strike if he didn't get it. So she really didn't know what to do. And it's interesting to hear that, and I'm kind of reflecting on all of this, that it's not the kid, it's not a willpower thing. It's not about, I don't want to listen to you. I don't trust you as my parents. It's really about control and this kind of safety.
Yes.
This is what I know. This is how it makes me feel. And I know how I feel after I eat that. And I know the texture. I know the taste. And especially if a child is neurodivergent, right? They have so much going on, so much stimulation, or that maybe they just want what they know when they're eating.
I thought that's a very, very good point. And you bring up the word safe. That is a big one. These are the kids' safe foods. They won't choke on them. They won't throw up. They whatever is going on in their mind, these foods they know they can eat safely. That is a big part of it. When you talk about food chaining again, like the burrito, for example, Taco Bell, then you go somewhere else. Oh, let's try the burrito from here. Let's try the burrito from here. Let's make a burrito at home. You stay with burrito, you stay with the same ingredients, but you can chain out to just making it different. The other thing with food chaining, not just like, here's a strawberry, try this strawberry jam, continue on, but a lot of kids have color sensitivities, like I only eat brown foods or broken foods. So you give them a cookie and they always eat this cookie, but if you give them the cookie and a piece is broken off, they might go, I'm not eating that.
Really?
So yeah, so that's another thing to start working on too. And one of the strategies that I've used that does work is giving them a little fork and knife and having them cut it up themselves so that they can start eating broken pieces of the same food. And they start going, and they think it's so much fun. And sometimes what they do is cut up one, but still eat the whole one. Which is very common to start. Yeah, because again, this is a broken one. That's a whole one.
But they're getting this exposure to the broken cookie.
Yes, let them touch, feel. Like it's okay if they make a mess. Let them touch, feel, throw, whatever it is with their food, because they're exploring it, they're tasting it, they're using their sensations to understand it. And the more exposure that you give them, the more it becomes a safe food. And it could take up to 50 times to put a food in front of them for them to actually eat it.
Wow. My heart goes out to the parents out there who are breaking up a cookie 50 times. But you've worked with families where it might have taken that long, but there was a breakthrough.
Yes, exactly. And I encourage them to put their kid in the kitchen. Just if they like chocolate chip cookies, have them bake chocolate chip cookies with you. And if they're not going to eat it, who cares? Give them the one that they know from the grocery store, but let them feel it, touch it, bake it, feed it to the family because they get pleasure in seeing other people eat it. And then over time, it's okay that they have food on their hands. It's okay that they're touching it. It's okay that they're feeling it. And they might eventually eat it. It could become one of their safe foods.
I love when you mentioned the carrots, where eventually she was like, I'm sick of carrots.
Right.
That was her own choice.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
She knew when she was ready for something new, and that kind of opened that doorway for her. So including them in the process seems to be foundational, and earning their trust. I hear a lot about sneaking in veggies. So this seems like the opposite of that.
Yes.
In a sense, not the opposite, but instead of like, oh, I'm going to sneak this in and not tell them, you're going to tell them.
Yeah. Exactly. Yes. Encourage.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. The sneaking, what happens is they don't trust you. You're trying, and then the trust ends, and then they go right back to their safe foods. If you have them put it in with you, they see what's going into it, and they're more likely to eat it. The other aspect is that our food environment has taken fruits and vegetables out of our food. So putting it back in as an ingredient, like if you're making muffins, make them with zucchini and carrots and blueberries. That's not sneaking it in. That is actually what our food is supposed to be. It's supposed to be half fruits and vegetables. So encourage them to make it a part of the food. And kids love colorful things. They love seeing color. So when you put these colors into their food, they're also more likely to want to eat it because the food looks more appealing.
Totally.
Yeah.
I remember once they made a green ketchup and I was like, what are they doing? And I was like, oh, but as a kid, that's kind of fun.
Yes, like green eggs and ham.
Exactly.
Yeah, that was, yes, that's something I did with a classroom. We did green eggs and ham to encourage eating something that was outside of the box. Yeah.
Wow.
Without food dyes, it was very tricky.
Yeah. That's so amazing.
Mm-hmm.
So what is another way to create this motivation for children to reach for the right foods?
Well, there's no right or wrong foods.
Mhm.
That is the first thing that I tell kids. Like, all food has value. So what I focus on is the value with giving food value for the kid. Let's say we have a kid who loves baseball. Baseball is, you've got a ball coming at you, so you want to see it. So vitamin A is the vitamin that's in carrots, any orange, reds, yellows, that make the kid, I'm like, okay, well, if you eat these foods, and I let them pick, they'll see the ball better. They'll be able to hit it. So I create motivation based on their sport. They'll run faster because they're eating their carbohydrate energy source. Their protein is you building those muscles to be able to hit the ball harder. So if I put food in terms of what it does for what they want to achieve, that is their motivation. And it can be anything. They could be a musician. They could be sports. They could, sometimes it's the focus, like some kids really love school. So it's, oh, you can focus on this, listen to your teacher. A lot of any motivator that I find, but it has to come from the kid. So I learn the kid, find the motivator, and use the value of food to put it with their life.
I could not love that more.
Oh,
I love that. I mean, I'm thinking of myself and how limited my food intake was as a kid.
yeah.
But I also was a musician and a dancer. And if I had, eating these foods might help me more in ballet.
Yeah.
I really think I would have thought of it differently. Also, what a lifelong, skill or knowledge to have. Like, your food is really fueling you.
Yeah.
And so picking foods with that in mind is something we all should be doing.
Yes. Yeah. Once I learned that, it opened up my world of food, especially when I was feeding my kid. It all started way back when my kid was having those GI issues, and I was learning about how food moves through the digestive system and how some foods slow it down and cause constipation. Some foods make it go fast. Some foods make it so you have heartburn. Sometimes it's just too much food at once or too much of this type of food. So when I learned that was a huge motivator for my child and I to solve his issues.
Wow.
Yeah.
Are there some foods that are really important to kind of support brain health for children when they're young, like healthy fats, or are there some things that you kind of, recommend a lot of children to eat?
So yes and no. A balanced diet is the most, I would say, important, as long as they're getting a certain amount of healthy fats, a certain amount of protein, a certain amount of energy, a certain amount of fruits, vegetables. So I have like a picture that I use to help them and walk them through it. But a balanced diet is number one. Now, kids who are more neurodivergent can be low in certain vitamins, and it could be because of their limited food intake, or it could be just how their biology is too, their physiology. So that actually plays a role. So yes, there are some foods like omegas that I might say eat more of for brain health, especially foods that have DHA or APA, and B vitamins, because those are what help build nerves. So yes, and a lot of those foods are in omega foods like nuts, seeds. Yeah, there are a lot of different vitamins. Zinc for growth and development, which again is in nuts and seeds, in whole grains. So we might focus more on whole grains versus white. We're going to focus on foods that have less preservatives. We're going to eliminate food dyes unless they're natural. And, but it's not so restricted. They still can go to birthday parties, still can have fun. But we also focus on when they eat these foods. That's a big factor. If they're eating cake before they go to bed, it can shoot up to the brain and wake them up. So it's a combination of a balance of nutrients. If they have food allergies or intolerances that we're not aware of, it's so individualized.
I love what you said specifically about, the birthday party, because I can only imagine at being a child and having a really strict diet, how that would seep into your whole life. It could identify you. It could be something to overcome. I'm not like everyone else. All my friends get to do this. I have to bring my own. Talk to me about, the gluten-frees, the casein-frees.
Yes.
I'm sure there's definitely value there. People have had fabulous results, but how do you approach these kind of more severe or stricter diets with children?
Yeah, exactly. Many, many ways. So first we'll get a celiac panel test. If they're allergic, we know. That's for gluten-free. If they come back negative, then we might run a test to see if it's maybe casein. But for the most part, we don't even need to run tests. Doing elimination diets help. The gluten-free, casein-free diet is very restrictive. It can be social isolating for the kids, and it can take away really important nutrients that the kid's getting in other foods. I'm going to use one of my patients as an example for this diet. The child used an iPad to talk. She had autism and was only doing 2-word sentences. Now, the parents wanted to try everything, and we started just from the beginning. The first thing I did was an intake. What is this child eating? Are they having reactions? Are they having constipation? Are they having any GI issues? So really a whole picture of the child. I usually start with casein-free if I'm going to do anything. But in this case, she was eating cheese as a snack. She was eating cheese in her eggs and breakfast. Very limited intake. Eating cheese at lunch, quesadillas, and eating some cheese something at dinner. And I said, we need to cut down on the cheese. I don't know if she needs to be on a gluten-free, casein-free diet. We're going to work our way towards it because it can cause nutritional deficiencies. It can cause social isolation, and it can be very hard on a kid not being allowed to eat certain things if it's not necessary. So yes, some kids it works great, but we start and work our way there. With this child, little by little, because she had taste, sensory issues, we started eliminating cheese and swapping for liked foods in different in different meals. She was still having, by the time we arranged it or changed her diet, she was still eating cheese once a day because she loved cheese and I didn't want to take it away from her.
I'm so glad you didn't. I also love cheese, and her diet sounds just like mine. So I'm rooting for her. Don't take the cheese.
Exactly. Because that would have been really hard. Yes. And then behaviorally, it would have, right. So we don't know if it was the food or taking it away that would have caused the problem. So little by little, we made these changes with her. Here's another snack. Here's a different food. And little by little, once a day. And she started doing 3-word sentences on her iPad. And this wasn't for the course of maybe 2 months because she had a few more liked foods and you just sort of swapped them out. And little by little, she was improving. She had less GI issues. She wasn't having constipation. And all we did in the beginning was just reduce the cheese.
Yeah.
So
And her parents noticed a change in her too.
huge difference, especially in behavioral. She was able to focus because all of that sugar, carbohydrates from the cheese, it's like milk sugars, was going to the brain, and it was really fogging her brain and really affecting her. And she was having constipation. And because of that, she was having behavioral issues because she always had a stomach ache. So sometimes these diets our parents want the magic pill, the solution. But sometimes the solution is our journey getting there and not always having to get to that end point.
And a life that works for you and your kid.
Exactly.
So you kind of build your way up and then you try those things, but you don't just kind of cold turkey go there.
Right.
Interesting. Yeah. I'm so glad that you shared that example and that is your approach, because I can imagine that creating that kind of just the rigid rules of it makes something good and bad and limits how psychologically that wouldn't be.
Yeah, exactly. They already have limited intake, and now we're creating a more limited diet, and that is really hard on a child.
And like I am thinking a lot about how if you don't get a lot of sleep, and if you're feeling off physically, you're not always your best self. And my heart goes out to the parents who might feel like their kid is trying to defy them, but really they're just not feeling well.
I forgot that girl.
Yeah.
That I mentioned. She slept through the night for the first time, and she was, I think, 12 for the first time. Full night's sleep. The mom was like, I slept. I can't believe it. I slept through the night the first time in like 12 years. Or maybe she was 8. I'm sorry. I can't remember the exact age, but
it was a long time.
It was a long, long time. And she just called me up and said, I slept through the night. It was just crying and so happy. And it was, she was in pain. She was uncomfortable. She was tossing and turning, and food plays a huge role.
Well, that's really, it is that quote, let food be thy medicine. But I'm really sitting here thinking about, how important this pillar is in someone's kind of comprehensive care. Like if you have a neurodivergent child, you do need a pediatrician, you need a neurologist, you need all these things. But it seems like nutrition is such an important piece of this puzzle.
Yeah. I will say multiple things. I am clearly neurodivergent. My child is neurodivergent, my younger one. And when I changed the food for my older one, it made the two of us, our focus was better. My energy level, because I just bounce all over the place, and I found myself focusing more, and I found that it was working on myself and my other child at the same time, and we weren't even trying. We just completely changed our food environment. So yes, that was again defining moments that led me on the path of like, I want to help other people do the same thing,
because we all have the power to do that.
Yeah.
You don't need some outside thing to just choose different foods that you're eating.
Yeah.
So what are some, obviously everyone's different. I'm super inspired myself to really notice also how different foods are affecting my mood, my attention, all these things. But what are some major, takeaways for anyone listening? When they're at the grocery store or when they're thinking about foods, what were some of the major things you did in your transformation?
Many things. One, portions, like when you divide food up into portions, you've got an energy food, which is your carbohydrate foods, your grains for the most part. You've got proteins, you got fruits and vegetables and healthy fats, and you don't have to eat them all at the same meal. But when you're eating too many portions of your grains, your energy foods, it floods the brain. And for a child who's neurodivergent, pay attention to how many portions. If they're just having a hamburger with a bun and French fries, that is the top bun, the bottom bun, and the fries are all energy foods flooding the brain. So making food swaps. Start by making food SWATs. How many energy sources? Their children, they're growing 1, 2 at a meal, then at a snack, and a meal at a snack. We keep giving it to them because they need it. We're not taking it away. But how many? And if there's a fruit or vegetable at every meal, so that 2 food, 2 things.
I love that.
Yeah.
The 2 food, it's so
Right.
simple, but it
Yeah.
does take them away from just the one thing.
Yes, exactly. And letting the child choose. So if we put it on the plate and we've put, let's say, Brussels sprouts, and the kids goes, I don't want Brussels sprouts. Well, let them pick a fruit or vegetable. Like, okay, I know you love apples. Go get an apple. I'll slice it for you. So as long as there's another color on the plate, so it's not just 2 things, it's 2 colors.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's like your brown chicken with your red apple, kind of. And even if the kid's older, it's still 2 colors because the kid's plate, like the diet that you described, is a very brown, yellow plate.
It is.
So yes, focus on another color. What do we have in our pantry that you like, or a refrigerator that's another color? So that's one key takeaway. So to kind of refine that, it would be, if we have an energy food like a bun, instead of fries, let's have them find a fruit or vegetable that they would like. Or if they really want the fries, take away the top bun and still fruit or vegetable. Let them get, sliced apples, something like that. So really kind of rebalancing that plate a bit.
And I love the approach of it's not something's bad. It's just that's a lot of the energy source at once.
Yes, exactly. And they need it, right? Because that'll affect focus, behavior, all of that. All right. Another key takeaway is, 1, let the child choose. So keep it individualized. Just because you like the food, you made it this way, maybe that's not something they like. But we're also focusing on foods that are closer to nature. So if your child says, well, I don't like this, I want that, make sure it's at least in a similar food group. Like they're not replacing the Brussels sprouts for potato chips. They're replacing it for a fruit or vegetable. Close to nature, when I say that, what that means is we've got packaged foods, and we've got packaged foods with food dyes and preservatives, and they're not bad. We just really need to really limit these because this is the world we live in. Having kids pick and having you bring foods home that are more close to nature, so a fresh apple, applesauce, and then kind of chaining up from there would be more processed, would be an apple pie on the top end. So applesauce are your more closer to nature sources. Or having them kind of focus more on that helps with digestion. It helps with more colors, and it helps with their taste and texture palates.
I think one of my major takeaways is the power of including them, in all of this. Like whether, you pick your vegetable, or what's your motivation. It's about empowering them to make their own decisions and to make this all less scary by bringing them into the process.
Very well said. Yes, exactly. No tricking them. Empower them. Don't make them sit at the table until they eat their vegetables. Don't get mad at them if they don't want it. Just because you like this food that you made doesn't mean they like it. They're kids. They have different tastes, textures, smells, things that they like. That's different how you like it. So maybe you like to put a certain spice in something or a flavor, and they're like, I don't like that flavor. So it's not the Brussels sprout that they don't like. It's how it was cooked or the flavoring. If you work with them and say, all right, well, let's find different sauces. Let's try it a different way. They're more likely to eat it. So I hear a lot in my office. I hear a lot of, so I always ask the child, what vegetables do you like? And sometimes they'll be like, I don't know. And I'll say, okay, well, let's look at some pictures. And they'll be like, oh, I like that one because I have it at my friend's house. And the parents like, wait, what? I didn't know you like that. Well, Mom, I don't like how you make it. And they kind of were like, feel uncomfortable saying it, but it makes it so much better because then it opens up these doors to, oh, I didn't realize you didn't like it this way. You have different tastes than I do.
Wow. I can imagine, my heart goes out to the parent who finds that out. They're like, what, you like squash? I had no idea. But how exciting.
Yeah.
Because that's an easy fix to saute it or bake it or do something different with it than you did before. But it all comes back to asking and having them be a part of that process.
Yeah.
So as a parent yourself who has 2 children who, has lives been transformed by food, but also being on this journey yourself, do you have any advice for parents listening or just words of wisdom? I'm sure patience is a part of that.
Yes. Patience, understanding, listening, letting them make a choice, offering food swaps versus this is my dinner, I made it. Because I went through that stage. I made it. Why aren't you eating it? This is, I put my heart and soul into this meal and you're like, yuck. But exactly, letting them make their choices. But also, I would say keep exposure. That is one of the most important things. I would make this grilled cheese sandwich because, again, the bread and cheese diet. So I made this grilled cheese sandwich for my whole family. But what I put in was pesto sauce, tomato, and arugula.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah, it was good. And then I would cook it, and it ended up, I think, baking it in or whatever. And I would serve it to everybody. And my child every time would be like, Mom, why didn't you make it for me without the tomato, the arugula, and the pesto sauce? And I was like, because I want you to try it, I don't like it that way. I'm like, okay, well, just take it off yourself. So my kid would take it all off and wipe the sauce off, like extreme fine. And I just did it every time. Like, I'm not going to do that. This is what I'm making for everybody. But I also said, if you don't want it, go make yourself a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. It's okay. So I gave options and I didn't get mad. And I had to come to this moment to myself. But I made it like that every single time. And after, I would say, I think it was at least a year, and I tried to make it like every other week because I'm like, this is the meal. Let's go to work. I know it. She ended up just eating it. So little by little, it was like taking the tomato off, picking the arugula. I forget it. I'm not wiping the sauce off. And some specks of the green stay on because we were like taking every speck off. Yes. So little by little, some specks stayed on. The sauce, fine. I'll just deal with the sauce and then just eating the whole thing. And now she cooks. She's a young adult in college and cooks for herself and makes like a variety of meals. So I would say keep exposing the kids to foods, being honest about it. I made it because I knew she at least liked part of it. If it was a meal she didn't like at all, that's a different story. I'm not going to force her to eat something like that. And I also involved her in the process. So a lot of times I said, well, come help me cook it. Let's make it together. Just put less sauce on yours when you make it. So involving her as many times as I could get her into the kitchen worked.
That's
as well.
Well, I have learned so much from you.
Thank you.
And I really appreciate you chatting. If someone wants to learn more, so you work here in your practice is in Hermosa Beach, California.
Yes.
But you also have a website. And is there any other resources that you could share with people?
Yeah, my practice website is sharpnutrition.net. I do accept insurance and I see patients all over the US. So and I do cash as well. So I can see you by Zoom, even if you don't live here in this little city. So that's okay. I guess one of the things I'm going to say is be careful of misinformation that's out there. There's a lot of nutrition misinformation. So if you don't go to me, find a dietitian, not somebody who just calls themselves a nutritionist. Find an actual registered dietitian near you that can help you as well.
What's the difference? The dietitian went through more schooling or?
So there's people who call themselves a nutritionist and there's little to no schooling. Some have like a nutritionist certification, but it's kind of like you can be a nutritionist if you want and you can call yourself a nutritionist. There's no legal, it's a little scary. Registered dietitian, I went to college. I got a Bachelor of Science. I went to graduate school. I got a master's in nutrition. I did an internship, which was a whole year. So I went to LAC. I went to UCLA or Harbor UCLA, the hospitals, and did it on site. And then you have to take this board exam that is so hard to pass and study for. And then you are officially licensed as a registered dietitian. A nutritionist can't take insurance. A registered dietitian can. We can work in hospitals. We're considered medical professionals. So a nutritionist is you.
Yeah, anybody.
Because you know enough.
Yeah, I did learn a lot. That is amazing. And do you have any books or anything that people could read more about?
Yeah, that's a great question. I am going to be a chapter in a book coming out this year sometime. I don't know the exact date, but a therapist who specializes in neuroscience and neurodiverse children has produced this amazing book. And each chapter is about a different provider that will help children who are neurodiverse. And my chapter is the nutrition part. So So I'll post, once that's published, I'll post a link on my website, again, sharpnutrition.net.
Amazing. So tell me more about if someone is interested in working with you, where can they find you, or do you have any resources for people?
I do. There's two sides to me, actually. The first side is I have a private practice and I mentor other dietitians. So I do take interns and I help them with counseling. I help them educate them on neuroscience, nutrition for neurodiverse children, and seeing patients and helping. And the other side is I own a test prep company because, as I mentioned, we have to take a board exam to become a dietitian. That's our last step. So I created a test prep company that's actually for students who are neurodiverse to help them learn and be able to take this test, because this test is really hard. I do have a podcast and a full course. RD exam prep, real life, real learning. So I take situations and put people into situations to help them learn it. So yeah.
Amazing. So you work with children and their families, and then you also work with other dietitians, whether training them, giving them tips, test prep. I love that the test prep is also helps if you're a neurodivergent, it'll help you pace that exam.
Yeah, my company is called RD Bootcamp. So it's rdbootcamp.com.
Okay.
And yes, I focused on helping students so that they have visual, auditory, and hands-on interactive in order to process and learn, because I needed that myself and it wasn't really available when I took the exam. So so my company actually is an extension of everything that I do for my families.
I am just in awe of all the different things you've created. And I love how your own experience, you saw the holes of what people needed, whether it was a dietitian with your experience or how to help other people be dietitians. Well, thank you so much. I learned so much, and I hope anyone listening not only hopefully learns something that improves their child's quality of life, the family's quality of life, but also they just feel like their shoulders drop, like it's not just me, it's not just my kid. You know, your child is extraordinary, and their brains are working differently. And so, you know, their food is just a part of that puzzle, and helping them to trust it, to enjoy it, to branch out might be a process, but it sounds like it really can improve their well-being. Food really is the medicine.
Yes, exactly. And it's okay if it takes time. It could take years. So that is okay. But yes, use the power of food to be the medicine. Yeah, as much as you can.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
That was so amazing.
Thank you for having me.
Yes.
It was really wonderful.
It was so fun. Of course.